here we are, folks. We've arrived at our last bait reveal on this edition of Unpacking with the Pros. Last, but certainly not least. If you've watched this up until this point, I wanted to build a little bit of anticipation for you because we're going to be talking to the guy who most people consider to be the greatest angler of all time. Here we go. And if there's anyone who defines what it means to be a champion in the sport of bass fishing, it's this man. These stats are still crazy to me. $6.8 million in career earnings, 8 Angler of the Year titles, 28 career wins, 4 Bassmaster Classic victories, 121 top 10 finishes, and a 2018 Hall of Fame inductee. From Kalamazoo, Michigan, Mr. KVD, Kevin VanDam, welcome to Unpacking with the Pros. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Man, I'm doing great.
Well, we are glad to have you on. Thanks for taking some time with us to unveil the bait and talk bass fishing. We'll go ahead and jump right into it. What are our subscribers getting this month?
Well, it is a special kit for Neko rigging from Mustad. Check it out. So everybody that bass fishes, should know anyways what a Neko rig is or what wacky rigging is, and it's a deadly technique. And I love to power fish, but this is something you have to have in your back pocket. You got to be ready when it gets tough. There's just nothing better than a wacky rig to catch them.
Absolutely. And when I think of your career, and I think when a lot of people think about, Kevin VanDam, they think of power fishing, they think of moving lures like spinner baits, jerk baits, crank baits. On your website biography, it says, after winning the BASS Angler of the Year on your first season with the BASS Top 100 circuit in 1992, naysayers of this unconventional fishing style claim that such a blitzkrieg approach to bass fishing would never hold up over time. Well, 28 professional bass fishing tour wins, 4 classics, and 8 Angler of the Year titles later, it's still holding up. But when people think about this sort of high octane power fishing, they may not immediately think about finesse fishing. So where does this say with a Neko wacky rig? Where does that fit into your game?
Well, so I do the same thing with my finesse. I do a lot what we call power finesse. So, trying to use a finesse technique and then be able to do it a little faster. So one of my favorite things to do is Neko rig, with those tungsten weights, because it is efficient. You get the best of both worlds. You can get, your soft plastic, whether it's a stick worm or a finesse worm or, a rage cutter worm or whatever it is that you're wacky rigging. You can use a heavier weight and have it fall pretty fast. But, when you lift it off the bottom, you still get that wacky action, that little wiggle and quiver. And it's really good for, especially for clear water lakes and, summer fishing in the deep, where a lot of people might think about using a drop shot or something like that. I'll use, a Neko rig in that situation. And again, don't just think, the only thing you can put on there is like a Strike King Ocho. There's a lot of different baits that you can rig this style with. You can do creature baits. You can do, swim and tail worms. One of my favorites is a Strike King Rage cutter worm. It's kind of like a stick worm with a swim and tail on the back of it. And so, you can put an O-ring on it in the middle, hook it in the middle, put a nail weight in it, and it has a pretty fast fall. It's still got some really good action to it. And, so it gets down quick. But when you lift it off the bottom, it has that wacky wiggle to it and shake. So it's a great bait for me and a technique where I catch a lot of, largemouth and that are, when I'm ledge fishing and that is definitely, it's a cleanup bait, for me. So very often, I'm going to still power fish, but this is something that, once you catch 4 or 5 off of a spot, you hit a school cranking a ledge or something like that. And that's where it really fits in this time of year. You want to throw this in there because you'll get a few more bites with it. And a lot of times some really big ones with this, with this technique. So, I learned early on, it's not just for going down the bank, throwing it, bushes or docks or things like that. It's something that you can fish anywhere. It's very efficient in deeper water, and it doesn't have to be slow.
Well, and I think that you typically go out preferring probably to go with the more typical power fishing style that you've helped invent with crankbait, spinnerbait, stuff like that. If you're going out anticipating that power fishing bite, but things aren't panning out, with the rapid fire of hard baits, what conditions might indicate it's time to break out the finesse gear?
Well, whenever you get, high pressure conditions, again, clear water or a lot of fishing pressure around, the easy ones are going to get picked off, or the ones that are going to chase a bait, a long ways, and hit a moving bait. It just doesn't happen. So, when you have those post frontal conditions and things like that, and again, around a lot of fishing pressure, it's a deadly technique. There's not a pro out there now that doesn't throw, wacky rigs and Neko rigs, a lot as their finesse arsenal. I mean, we still use shaky heads. We're still using a drop shot rig, and you can use a Ned rig and things like that. But it's just a incredible technique, for a lot of situations that, the fish aren't on the bottom, because it's working for you from the second it hits the water till it gets all the way to the bottom. So it's really good for schooling fish. It's really good for fish that are suspended, or, roaming around, and that's where, growing up here in the Great Lakes and fishing a lot of clear water lakes and stuff, that I learned the power of a Neko rig. It's just, the clearer the water, the farther they can see it. And it's just something about that unique action, the way that it falls. And, you don't have to just cast it out there and let it sink all the way to the bottom. You can kind of shake it on the way down as it goes. So, I mean, this is something that I'm not scared to throw in 20, 30, 40 foot of water. It's a deadly technique, and you can even fish it vertical, just like you would a drop shot. So I've had a lot of success doing that as well, where, you mark one on your graph and you just drop that Neko right down to him, and then just shake it right in his front of his face, so it gets down there pretty quick, and, not as fast as a heavy drop shot weight, but it does get down there pretty quick. And you're giving them a presentation that they just don't get to see very often. There's, again, a lot of pros use this technique a lot, and keep it real secretive. I mean, Justin Lucas he does it a ton. Aaron Martins, I mean, all the, I think a lot of the Western guys picked up on this early, John Murray, but everybody knows about it, on tour now. It's a deadly way to fish, just about any time. And, it doesn't have to be clear water, but I think that's where it really shines. I mean, I was doing this a few years ago, pitching, Neko rigs into holes in the grass, and things like that. So it's a little unconventional compared to, some of the standard rigs, but it just generates more bites.
Absolutely. And you mentioned being able to employ this sort of finesse game into your power fishing approach. What's typically your setup? Rod, reel, line?
I like to throw it most of the time on spinning equipment. I love the control that I get on a spinning rod. Even if I'm fishing for big largemouth, or I'm around a little heavier cover, I'll use a braided line. Typically, I'm going to use 10-pound braid with a fluorocarbon leader, and in the open, I'll use an 8-pound fluoro leader to it, and I like a pretty long leader too. I don't want them to see that braid. I like to use the yellow braid where it's real visible. You can see bites and things like that on the fall. But I'm going to have about a 20-foot fluorocarbon leader tied with a FG knot, and then that whatever size hook to match the bait. But typically, that setup right there on a like a 7.2 to 7'4", medium action spinning rod. I've got my own signature lues that I use for that. Again, if I'm using bigger baits, I want to use a little heavier action rod. If I'm using smaller worms and things like that, I may go to a medium light, but it's not that critical. I like a little longer rod just for the the sweep set. If you make a long cast out there and the line's going straight down, you got to pull a lot of bow out of that line. So a little bit longer rod, and then a high-speed spinning reel just really helps, to tighten up that line and get a good hook in them. These Tight-Nex hooks from Mustad are absolutely amazing. So they've got that coating, that titanium coating on them. They're super, super sharp. I mean, it is arguably I wish they could do that finish on every single hook that they make, to do it on trebles and things like that, because it's super slick. And you don't lose one hardly ever on that Tight-Nex hook. I mean, it is really special. So, I mean, I helped Mustad create that series. They do offer it in a weedless version too, but I always use the non-weedless one if at all possible. So if I'm fishing around grass, I don't like the weed guard at all. The only time I use the weed guard is if I'm around bushes or brush or standing timber, flooded timber, things like that. But for the most part, you just get the best action. It isn't something big and bulky on there that changes the look of it to the fish, and they just flat, stick them. It works really, really well.
That's awesome. So switching gears here a little bit, obviously it's no secret that over time, tournament bass fishing, it's always changing. There's always new baits coming out, new technology. What baits stick out to you over the course of your career that sticks out to you that significantly changed the way you fish?
I learned a long time ago the power of a jerk bait. It's just so erratic and it triggers a lot of bites. But you can say that about a ton of things. When spinner baits first came out, they were unbelievable, and it's still just a incredible tool. But there's so many new baits that we have in our toolbox. I mean, we got bladed jigs. That's been a craze. Swim baits, the whole swim bait craze. It started out west with these big giant tennis shoe size baits, and now we got swim baits for every size, style, for fish every depth and situation that there is. So we just have a lot more baits to do the same jobs with, and it's just a matter of what you have confidence in to be successful with it. I mean, you can throw a spinner bait, a bladed jig, a swim bait, and a square bill all on the same bank, and four pros will all be throwing one or the other, whatever they have a lot of confidence in, and they really make it work. So, and a lot of times it's just an experimental thing where you just throw a few of them and see if the fish like one presentation a little better over the others. But that's what it's all about, is just picking the precise presentation tool, and that's all a lure is they're just tools for the conditions and that exact situation. Just trying to maximize your opportunities based on all those variables at that time. And it changes a lot from day to day, just because you're catching them cranking a square bill today doesn't mean that a square bill is going to be the best thing tomorrow. In the spring of the year especially, things change really fast around the spawn, and you have windows that open and close quickly with certain techniques, and it's just being aware of how the fish are reacting to your presentation, and to know when you need to make that change. And it's not as simple as just saying, well, hey, under if the water temperature is this and it's cloudy and the visibility of the water is 1 foot, you throw this bait. There's always multiple tools that will do the same job, but you're just trying to find the one that does it the absolute best and that you've got a lot of confidence in for that situation.
Well, and to that point, when I think of a lot of your wins, I guess recently with like Grand Lake and Toledo Bend, like I think if you got 1 to 2 baits dialed in, and watching the live coverage, it's you just repeatedly catching fish and really having one particular bait, 1 or 2 baits dialed in. How often is that the case versus 5 or 6 baits that are working for you when you're in the hunt for a win?
Most of the time, it's really a lot of different baits. You got to use different baits. When in a perfect scenario, yeah, you got it dialed in to where you got a couple rods on the deck. They got this, maybe a couple variations of the same bait. If you have that scenario, it's pretty darn special. But most of the time, it's, you got to, kind of junk it up. You got to throw, a little bit of everything. You might have a top water, a jerk bait, a Neko rig, a shaky head, a spoon, I just think of the last tournament, that we had. It's just such a variation of cover, and with that, clear water there at Lake Travis there in Texas. I mean, you had to have everything from top water to, wacky worms to shaky heads to jigging spoons. I had swim baits. I had it all tied on, and just basically fishing what's in front of you. What's the best bait for that exact time, and what the mood of the fish was. So that's how it typically is most days. Is you're going to have a lot of rods on the deck. Fishing pressure has changed, a lot of the tournaments and things like that, to the point where you've got to be able to maximize the number of bites you get out of an area or off a spot. So that means showing them different looks, different presentations, and different lures.
Absolutely. And one thing that I've noticed, I think it was an article I was reading that talks about you using crankbaits to locate these schools. And then once you've located them and where they're lining up, you may continue to use a crankbait or whatever you have in hand, but you might slow it down and use a football jig or something like that.
Yeah.
Has that approach changed at all with like 360 imaging and forward facing sonar, or do you typically still use this crankbait approach to find them? Has that assisted, or how has that changed the game?
Yeah. I mean, for me, a crankbait is just such an efficient tool for, a lot of those deeper situations. It's just one of those baits that you can get down to an exact zone, and it has a lot of great triggering qualities when it gets there. So it's a lot more efficient than throwing a football jig or a big worm or a flutter spoon or something like that. But once you've got a school located, or you get a couple bites, then you absolutely want to show them, some of these other presentations for sure. But, in the beginning, I love to, I want to fish something that I can cover, more water with. That's why you see a lot of pros, that throw a spinner bait or a buzz bait, or, burning a swim bait down the bank, or a bladed jig or a square bill, and then, go back through and follow it up with a Carolina rig or flip or some kind of finesse, technique behind it.
Good deal. Well, I'm going to switch gears again, and I'm going to upload a photo here. And I want to see if you can actually see this on your end. But I've got a throwback here that I want to talk about with you. So that first picture, how old are you in that picture?
Gosh, I don't know. Maybe I know the picture, and from where it was at, that was up north in Traverse City. I was probably 8, maybe 7 or 8 or 9, years old then. And I was pretty fanatic at that time about it. It was a lot of fun. I caught both of those bass on a top water too.
That's awesome.
Actually a torpedo.
And obviously a lot has changed, including from this picture, on the right there. Between these two photos is, nearly $7 million in tournament winnings, 4 classic wins, 8 Angler of the Year titles, over 12,000 pounds of bass weighed in at a tournament or scored. And obviously being a critical piece to the launch of the MLF Bass Pro Tour. Do you still, I see the same smile on the first picture and the second picture. Do you still get the same sort of joy when you hook into a bass? Is it the same sort of just natural joy that you had then as in this other picture where you got 4 like 10 pounders you're holding up there?
Yeah, I love it. Still, I was just fishing a couple days ago. I was doing a show for Strike King and Lose, and we just absolutely blistered them and got done pretty early. And then after the show, I fished with my son, and I just can't get enough of it, especially smallmouth. I'm so busy with obligations and things like family and stuff like that I don't get to fish as much as a lot of people might think. So when I get that opportunity to get out there, man, I'm pretty giddy about it.
That's awesome. So one thing I wanted to ask, and I'm sure you get this question asked all the time, but I'm sure we're going to have a lot of young anglers out there, middle school, high school, college. to all of those folks out there listening, anybody that aspires to be a great bass angler, whether you want to tournament fish or not, you just want to get better as an angler. Can you leave us with a piece of advice on how we can truly learn this game and improve as an angler?
Well, there's no substitute for experience without a doubt. But in this day and age with so much content, just like what we're doing right now, I mean, you can watch a YouTube video, on so many techniques. I've got literally tons and tons of YouTube videos out there, different ones, jerk baits, and a lot of different tournament coverage and things like that. So there's definitely that side of it, but just getting out and fishing is probably the best way, and to fish with as many different people as you can. So I think it's fun to fish with the same guy, to fish team tournaments and fish with a buddy. But the way you learn the fastest is to fish with as many different good anglers as you can. So fishing as a marshal, or fishing as in a pro-am style, or just fishing, just going out on the water, just reaching out to some local pros in your area, things like that, guys that are just to get out with as many different people as you can, because you're going to learn a lot faster and learn something from just about everybody out there when you do that.
That's great. And I know you're getting ready to pack it up and leave for the next one. Yeah,
we've actually going to we got a Bass Pro Tour event at the Harris Chain this coming week. So leave in the morning, actually. It's a long ways for me here from Michigan.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure you got some packing to do. And for the listeners that don't know, you're joining us right after getting off of a hunting and fishing shoot. And you're always busy, like you said. So we really appreciate your time. And thanks for sharing so much information with us. And hopefully we'll be able to have you back on. And, looking forward to hopefully having the opportunity to talk with you again.
Yeah, the Champions Club is it's definitely a great club to be a part of. You get a lot of great information, and you get a lot of great products and great baits and things like that. So it's interesting to see what each month brings. So I look forward to being on again. I'm sure we'll have some cool Strike King stuff one of these days too. So you have to get me back for that.
Yeah, I need to get some Strike King stuff in here. I think that's the next thing up. I mean, I've got Ochos. Well, thanks, Kevin, and best of luck with the rest of the year. Go get that 9th Angler of the Year title, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Sounds good.